Professor Raj Kachroo is a man on a mission to eliminate ragging from our country. He lost his son, Aman Satya Kachroo, in a ragging incident in a Himachal Pradesh medical college in 2009, which led to a historic Supreme Court judgment against ragging and subsequent UGC regulations. He is involved in social activism, but of a very different kind. His activism involves research, requires patience, persistence, and working very, very closely with the government. Thank you for coming to the studio, sir.
Thank you very much.
Sir, this work that you're doing, its origin starts from a very sad incident.
Yes.
Loss of your only son. And he was just 18.
18.
And he went to a medical college, which is probably the dream of any parent. Very shortly after he went into the college, you got a phone call from him. And then you got a phone call from his friend within just 20 minutes. I just want you to describe how it all happened, what happened, and how did your entire journey in this space begin?
My son went into medical college after a few months. He used to tell me that things were all right. No, he did not complain a great deal about things. But one day I was in Dar es Salaam and he called me. And I asked him, Aman, what happened? He says, Dad, can you tell me how do we write a complaint about ragging? I said, what happened? He said, yesterday some boys came and they hit us and so on. And I didn't think that it was so serious. I said, did you go to get yourself checked? And he said, yeah, Dad, I went in the morning. I got myself checked. But only after 20 minutes, I got another phone call. He was no more.
You spoke to your son 20 minutes before he died?
Before he died.
And you were in Dar es Salaam?
I was in Dar es Salaam. And then I came back, of course. My wife was not also here. She was in Puttaparthi at that time. But what I heard was that he was hit by four boys drunk had come in the night into his room and few other boys. And they told him to stand up or whatever they did. And there's one boy pushed him to the wall and he hit his head on the wall. And it must have created a hemorrhage inside. He got to get it checked next day, and by the time it got checked and so on, it was too late. He passed away because of that injury. So that was it. These things happen so quickly that you don't really realize that the whole life is completely turned around. But when I came back here and everybody was very angry with the boys, 4 boys who had done this, and everybody was telling me that they must be punished and so on. I said, of course they must be punished. But that's not the solution to the problem. Justice does not mean punishing another person. Justice, in my opinion, means I'll get justice, Aman will get justice. If this problem is eliminated altogether, they are also victims of a system. My son was also a victim of a system, and those 4 boys were also victim of a system. Of course, I'm not saying that
they should be spared. What they did was right.
No, I'm not saying that.
But it doesn't end there.
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't end there.
We have to, as a nation, we have to look at the system. We have to look what we are doing to the generations that are in the colleges and how we are perpetuating this system of violence in universities. As I was telling you, there are 50,000 colleges across the country. Estimated population is 20 million students.
20 million?
20 million.
That's more than the population of many countries.
That is more than the population of many countries. And we are saying that these 20 million or 50,000 islands within the country have no law. Anything is acceptable.
I want to take a break there. So I'll come back to this point.
Yeah.
Let's just talk about this element of ragging, because all of us have been through colleges and institutions, and at some macro level, ragging is considered to be part of the indoctrination ceremony and all of that. And yes, there is ragging, which is fun ragging, which is mild ragging, and there is severe ragging. What are these instances of severe ragging? I mean, your son's case is one, but
let me tell you something. when I went to college myself here in Pantnagar University, and we faced ragging, but it was mild and it was a little fun. It was not pleasant, but it was still tolerable, and we used to think that this is the way you have to get in. But over the years, this whole thing has completely metamorphosed into a beast that is uncontrollable. So when people of my age still think of ragging, they think, ठीक है यार, इतना भी क्या है, थोड़ा बहुत तो चलता है.
थोड़ा toughening up हो जाता
हाँ,
है.
थोड़ा toughening up हो जाता है. But they don't realize
what is happening now.
What has happened? What has happened is a pure violence. If you did any of those acts outside the university, you would be arrested in 2 hours and put in jail. Because these are the acts of violence. But when you are...
Can you give me an example, sir? One or two.
No, I don't really want to get into the details, no, but you can think of anything, sexual harassment. Constant, what we would call sexual harassment of the highest order happens in the name of ragging in colleges. There is any kind of violence that you can think of happens in colleges.
In the name of ragging. So as you said, these 50,000 islands where IPC does not hold good.
Yes, it's very strange. Justice Basayat, a very senior Supreme Court judge, pointed it out. How can we have 50,000 islands where there's no law and order? So if you same act that you do on a street, you would be put behind the bars instantly, and this is crime, IPC. And you do it inside the campus or inside the gate, then it is acceptable because it's part of our social setup. This is not acceptable.
It's not acceptable, yeah.
This is violence. Violence in the
sanctioned violence.
Sanctioned violence. And that is why the Honorable Supreme Court at that time said we need proper regulations, we need a proper system to follow. But to get to that stage, after my son's funeral, I started work immediately. Within 4 or 6 days, I remember by 13th of March, I had an entire program ready. I don't know where the energy came to me, but I think it was a way of diverting myself from the tragedy.
Your sorrow was channelized into
producing a full report, full mechanism, how we can control ragging in this country. And I submitted it to the court. I submitted it to UGC, to various regulatory authorities, and finally it was accepted and it was implemented. So that's how the ragging program started.
But this system has to be much, much more than simply printing out memos and putting up notices or announcements that ragging is prohibited in this college and stuff like that.
Very, very different. This is very, very different. We said that technology is required. There are 3 components that we said are required. One is that non-governmental agencies like my civil society has to work in partnership with the government. It cannot be civil society is separate and the government is separate and then nothing will work. Second very important thing, which was also a prayer in the court for us, is that whatever the system we will implement must be monitored by somebody outside the government. It has to be what we call an independent monitoring system. A real independent monitoring system, not by what a government officer chooses somebody and says, can you do me a review of this? No. You need a totally independent monitor.
Almost like a human rights monitoring unit.
Yes, you need a monitor who has access to the entire data, who has access to everything that you're doing, so that you are integrated. I'll explain to you how it works. And the third is, of course, technology. When you are talking about dealing with 20 million students, 50,000 colleges, you cannot do it by writing letters and sending
memos.
Nothing of the kind. You have to be communicating with 50,000 college principals. You have to be have access. You have to have presence in with 20 million students. 20 million students should know your telephone number to start with.
They should know. Firstly, they should know that you exist.
That you exist, and you have to build their confidence. They should trust you. So the ragging prevention program has 3 components. One is a call center where students can call.
So this is a victim of the ragging can call out to a number?
Yes. As soon as the complaint arises, the call center informs the college, college authorities, informs the local police, and informs the anti-ragging committee and so on. The first priority is to make sure that the child is safe. And then the second priority is to make sure that the procedure prescribed by the regulation is followed. That means there's an anti-ragging committee, there is their decision, then there is
the resolution of
resolutions and so on and so forth. And what we had to do in this process to build the confidence of the children is that we had to give access to these children to their own case file.
Okay.
So we give them a password so that they could see their own case file, which has progressed, including phone conversations.
Okay.
That the call center people talk to the principal, what the principal is saying, because that creates a lot of transparency. Transparency means confidence.
Confidence that the system is working. कोई सुन रहा है
System
मेरी
is
बात.
working और सही भी है, fair भी है.
Fair भी है.
Fair है. अगर उसको लगता है कहीं fair नहीं है, तो वो भी बोल सकता है नहीं fair है. So once you bring a kid in control of this, they build the confidence is built and the trust is built. और दूसरा जो फिर उसके बाद awareness है, we wanted parents. मेरा second बहुत important था, which I realized myself I had missed out, was parental negligence of not seeing things carefully. We trust. Parents trust colleges. तब उसके मेरे बेटे के बाद से मैंने कितने लोगों से बात किया है जिनके बच्चों के साथ ये हुआ है. They trust. वो बोलते हैं हमने तो बोला था, कॉलेज प्रिंसिपल साहब ने बोला. When they send a child to the college, they trust the college is going to look after the child. The safety is taken for granted. But I constantly tell parents, do not do this mistake. I'm not saying that they are not taking care of your child, but make doubly sure. Yeah,
you can't abandon your...
Make sure, doubly sure that there are no symptoms, there is no change. Tell your son, it does not matter. बहुत बच्चे लोग सोचते हैं कि parents have spent a lot of money. They have already gone so much hassle to put me in the school. I cannot add another problem
for them.
Problem for them. And they avoid talking. So parents have to be vigilant and parents have to watch the children before it gets into some tragedy. And they must, this is my request to all parents who are listening to this, they must watch and be sure that everything is all right and constantly communicate with the child. So communication, increased communication with parents, teachers, students, colleges was the second major component of this, in which we said we will have to create major databases. And the third component of the ragging prevention program is compliance. We said we cannot take for granted that 50,000 college principals or 700 vice chancellors or whatever the numbers are, they are going to read the big regulation and then they're going to decide and so on, and then they're going to make sure. They will also say to somebody, please follow the regulation, and you don't know whether that person has followed or not. So we have to communicate and tell what we call compliance of regulations. We at least, if there is a requirement of 30 things to be done, at least 10 important things we remind them on phone. Talk to them on phone and tell them, sir, have you put your anti-ragging committee this year? Have you changed the website? Have you put it in the brochure this year? We're only very politely reminding you, sir. So once you do that, you keep this thing in live amongst the parents, amongst the students, amongst the colleges. So it is not dead. And one more thing, myth which people have is that it happens only when freshers come in admission time. If I talk to many people of my age or even younger, they say, ये तो seasonal problem है, 2-3 महीने की बात है. ऐसा कुछ नहीं. It's a year-long system, and it does not only happen between seniors and juniors. It happens between classmates. It happens between juniors. Seniors being harassed by juniors.
Really?
Anybody can be many. I was laughing at one time. There was a doctor who had spent 10 years practicing in the UP medical system. And then after 10 years, he thought I should go now for a master's degree in Kanpur Medical College. He was married, he had children, he had been a practicing doctor. As some young kids started harassing him. He himself was laughing. He said, "What is this?" Because they told him that you are a junior.
You're a fresher.
You are a fresher.
Hmm.
So he was, after even 10 years. So what I'm saying is that
this is not what the myth is कि वो senior junior को एक दो हफ्ते के लिए तंग करेगा उसके बाद.
हाँ, वो सब नहीं है, वो झूठ है. वो था, पहले जमाने में था. और जो आजकल का है, it is pure violence in the campus. It's a frustration of our social setup. बहुत सारे घरों में violence है, बहुत सारे घरों से निकल के it reaches into the colleges through these students and who went out the violence on other students. And they create a caste system whereby it becomes compulsory now for the younger people
to undergo
violence. And it has become, violence is becoming fashionable. It's a machoism of this.
Yeah.
But it is doing enormous damage to our culture, our younger generations. Enormous damage. Most people, when you talk about bragging, and most of, including my family, friends and everybody, they will always talk about अच्छी चीज नहीं है. In the sense that this is some violence and it's a human rights issue, should not be done. Nobody says it should be done. Says, no, it's not a good thing. But they don't see what does it do. It completely reduces the emotional intelligence of a generation. We have a lot of research happening in the worldwide now. They are saying emotional IQ contributes only small amount of percentage. EQ, emotional quotient, emotional intelligence or emotional social learning is a lot more important now than
which is true. I mean, we are seeing it in corporates as well now, where we talk that if to be a good leader, EQ is actually more important than IQ.
EQ is equal, or same in scientific.
A good citizen, for that matter.
Same in scientific world, in the same thing, a creativity. If you are talking about a generation of our educated, because these 20 million people are the cream of India.
Correct. They are in colleges, so they are colleges and education institutions.
They are privileged cream. And now here we are creating an environment where we are telling them, creating in their mind a thought. First of all, empathy is finished. They say empathy is not a thing to be done. It's sissy's job. To be empathetic is
You're a wimp.
ये तो बच्चे का कौन सा sissy है? They don't realize empathy is not a sissy job. It is the top job.
The bravest one.
It's the bravest job. But we are creating that culture in colleges, and we are creating that atmosphere in colleges where empathy has to be. Then we are attacking their self-confidence. There is a person who we are telling him, you don't know. You have to ask senior. Senior knows better. Or I know better. So stop thinking. Listen to my instruction. And then we are creating a generation where they are being told that unconditionally they have to learn to obey.
Blind obedience.
Blind obedience.
To violent authority.
To an authority who is an idiot. He's trying to show up. What happens in colleges now is that this person who is a bully in a certain sense, although bullying is in schools, but he's a bully. He cannot get admiration for any reason because he has no qualities. But he seeks admiration by force. He's pushing these people. But this doesn't, once it happens over a period of time, 4 years, 3 years, 5 years in a college, it has an impact on people's creativity. It has an impact on people's ability to do better things.
Self-confidence, self-esteem.
And now if you imagine year after year, a generation of 20 million, cream of India, 20 million people are going through this process.
Demeaning process.
Reducing the self-confidence, reducing the empathy, reducing awareness, their awareness of their potential. What does it do to nation's GDP? What does it do to nation's productivity? What does it do to nation's scientific temperament? What does it do to creativity? Because we're not talking about anybody. We're talking about the cream of the
nation. Correct.
So ragging is not just a human
Individual
rights
problem.
violation. It's a problem Government of India and other states should look at it. It's of the highest priority. If you want to improve the educational standards, actually when we were in court, one of the paragraphs which was never followed was Justice Pasad and Justice Ganguly, I think it's still there in the court ruling. He said, we want to see after a few years, after dust settles in a way, we want somebody to see what does it do to the educational standards of a university and how the educational standard of the university or college should be rated up or down because of the prevalence of ragging. You see, it is not possible that you can say, IIT Kanpur can say we are excellent, but we have ragging. It's not possible.
It's an oxymoron. Basically, you are saying that I am creating an environment where bullying is allowed, where violence is allowed, but otherwise I am very high in education.
I am high because I can solve a mathematical algorithm very well. But this was actually discussed in 2009, but we have not followed up on this. But the point is that one has to see that you cannot have high educational standards and ragging. Two things do not go together. Cannot coexist. If you have ragging, education standards have to go down. Whether you pass your degrees with good marks and you can solve a mathematical algorithm very nicely and you can create a search engine of a computer program, but doesn't mean that you are educated and you can lead the next generation into scientific development and scientific temperament and creativity and so on. So we have to understand and accept this.
Also, sir, in many ways, you just mentioned that violence is increasing. I mean, it's increasing in the society, we see that. And it's definitely increasing in campuses. Do you believe that allowing ragging, whether it's in the name of tradition, whether it's in the name of toughening up or whatever, is actually the first step on the slippery slope?
It is.
To condone violence or condone solving problems using violence or imposing your view instead of debate of logic, imposing it by violence.
We are creating a culture of forcing people, impose my view, because only virtue I have is that I'm 2 years older to you.
That's it.
Or I am a richer person, or I am in this class, or I am in this class, and that's the only virtue I have. And I'm saying that is sufficient virtue. It overrides everything else. Your brilliance, your thinking, your ability, this is of no relevance.
I just happen to be here before you.
I just happen to be 2 years born, 2 years before you. That's it.
And that gives me a license to...
That gives me a license to do whatever I want.
Strip you of your dignity, of your... And to inflict pain on you.
And get you used to accepting that you are useless. What does it do to your self-awareness and self-confidence is unbelievable. If you are getting used to this, कि मुझे तो सिर नीचे करके बात करना ही करना है. I'm not saying, I always say that disagreement and disobedience or respect are not disobedience. Respect and disagreement are two different things.
Yeah.
When we confuse this in our family or in our college, that disagreement is disrespect, then there is a problem.
And the corollary, that blind obedience means respect.
Respect. So disobedience, and the disrespect. I don't want any kid to disrespect anybody, whether you like him or not, whether he's poor or rich, whether this person is on the street or something. Respect is something, it improves you. It improves me. If I'm able to respect anybody, regardless, who is getting benefit?
Especially the weaker, especially the underprivileged.
I am getting benefit.
Correct.
But if I start confusing it with agreeing with what you say, then I am damaging myself. I was actually in one day in a school in Delhi. And it was a Arya Samaj school and next to the police colony. And they were very nice people, very religious. Actually, I learned a lot on that day
Hmm.
from that school. And then I asked them, you do not have to listen to your mother and father, because it was a religious school. Mata, Pita are not gods always. Not always. They are, but not always. So you have to distinguish kab hai, kab nahi hai. So blindly following your parents. And then this one kid said, no, sir, this is in our tradition and culture. I said, but your parents are in the police because they were children. He said, जो वो पकड़ के लाते हैं criminals को, जेल में वहीं डालते हैं, should their children also follow their mother and father? This is an extreme example. I'm not saying everybody. But should they respect those people who are in jail? They're my mother and father. Yes, they should respect. But should I agree with them? No, I should not agree with them. I should learn to disagree with them because I'm saying I want to go beyond my mother and father. If in a college, a doctor, second year doctor says to young guy, now listen, you have to agree what I'm saying. I say, but how do I go beyond you? If I'm
getting stunted by your thinking.
If I'm setting a boundary, that my boundary of thought is your thought. How am I going to go beyond this? And you're not the ultimate thought. You're not God.
Nobody is. I mean,
so you are nothing. I was talking to some children some teachers actually in Raipur only a few days ago, and one person asked me this kind of a question. Bhai, isse to kuch doctors get better with this. I asked him, we are not the only country in the world who produces doctors.
Yeah.
There are doctors in America, Europe, South America, Africa, Asia, everywhere else in the world. And they don't go through this. So they are good doctors too, and better. Many of them are much better, at least in empathetic sense. I have seen my friends in Europe and America, they say we lack in empathy with the patients. And they are good doctors. They have done excellent work. They have not been toughened through ragging. So if they did not need, why do we need it here?
No, but this, I think, is a myth that has been propagated that ragging toughens you.
No.
What I'm hearing is actually ragging weakens you.
It definitely weakens you. It absolutely crushes your confidence. Over the years, there are people who face physical violence. And I have seen many people at the age of 55 who have faced 30 years ago. They still talk about the trauma. And what that trauma has done is one thing. But those ones who do not have trauma, but what is their thought process, how it has been suppressed is another aspect. And the majority of masses of students we are suppressing thought process. We are not allowing independent thinking. This is a thing that stops. It's a suppressing independent thinking. Some people are trying to get up and something comes up and pushes it down.
What's the psychological reason behind this? Why do people rag? I mean, is it because it was done to him, so he has to follow the tradition and he has to exacerbate it because usko agar 10 kiya, to main isko 100 karunga?
There is an element of that. But where does it come from in the very beginning? It comes from families, homes.
It comes from homes.
Yes. A kid who has faced suppression in the home.
Violence.
Spare. I'm not being offensive to families or anything, but I'm just saying, take an example. There's a little kid and there is a hierarchy at home. There is younger father, chachaji, tayaji, pitaji, tayaji, and grandfather ji or whatever. And when they listen to this hierarchy, and many times it's irrational. But this kid has to go through this at home to this irrational. He gets used to this and he thinks that this is
the way it is.
This is the way.
Norm. This is the norm.
This is the norm. He doesn't know there's another way of people. There's a different way people live in this world and they can command respect by virtue of some other qualities rather than just because I'm getting older and older and older and I'm getting more and more authority. And he says, now when I was a young kid, now I'm in college, I'm independent, I have achieved that authority, now I'm going to impose it on this. But that's the seed. But it spreads because then there are many people who suffer and they say, I must also impose it on somebody else. And as I told you in the beginning, they are making it fashionable.
Hmm.
You don't do it, you are a
Wimp.
you are
You're
a
a softie.
sissy, you are a softie, you are this. So once that atmosphere is created, the peer pressure is created.
Hmm.
Whenever I'm in the colleges or talking to anybody, I tell them the fence sitters are a problem.
Who watch this?
Who watch this and
do
say,
nothing.
"Mujhe kya karna hai?" It is his problem. मैंने तो नहीं किया. When I asked somebody, I said, मैंने नहीं किया. I said, आपने देखा? हाँ देखा. तो किया? It's as good as doing or worse. You are part of the process. अगर आपने देखा और सुना नहीं, that's a different thing. But आपने देखा और कुछ नहीं किया. Now what is the education you are getting?
So this kid who is in a college sitting on a fence, who sees injustice happening to somebody who is defenseless, will go on to become the citizen who will be in a street and he'll see injustice happening to a woman, injustice happening to somebody who's weak, and he'll wash his hands off because that's what he's learnt in the educational institution where he was supposed to be taught how to become a good citizen.
He says it has nothing to do with me. I am away. And this also comes from families. You see, parents will tell them, don't get involved.
Don't get involved.
Stay away. Stay away from trouble. Do not get involved. No matter what happens, if you see somebody getting killed or raped or murdered or anything, just run away. Do not get involved. That's a social setup. We need to change. And of course, the governments have to support these things. I do not, as I told you in the beginning, I am one of those people who believes that everything is the responsibility of the government, and it is without the government you cannot do any of these.
Correct.
No matter how much we dislike working with the government, how many problems we face. I see many people, I run a school in partnership with the government, in a similar kind of a partnership, and many people say, "Itna paisa aapne waste kiya, itne mein to khud hi bana diya hota school." I say, you missed the point, my friend. You want to work with the government. What is the point in creating parallel system to the government that is selective, that is a very minuscule, and that is, you are happy, feeling happy.
Because I have saved these 200 kids.
मैंने इतना किया, इतने लोगों को sewing machine दे दिया, इतने लोगों को ये किया. It is of no use. It's SDG में as sustainable development. I have a background of development work for 20 years in Africa. I believe that in India, I've been watching for the last 10 years, all the schemes, all the things. And it is the civil society, good corporate civil society, good well-meaning people are staying away, fence-sitting. They say, well, we will do our bit. What is your bit? Is I can open my hospital, or I can open my 2 schools, or 20 schools, or 200 schools. But what about 35 lakh schools of the government of India? Why can't you get involved with the government? Of course, they will not let you in.
It will be difficult to let you in.
They will not let you in. It will be difficult, and they'll harass you. But that is what you require. We need. I call it in my own words, it's a leaking bucket phenomenon we operate here.
Explain that.
Let me explain. Government of India and state governments of India spend enormous sums of money in sustainable development schemes. Poverty alleviation, health, women's access to justice, women's empowerment, children, all SDGs. And it's a huge budget. Education for that matter. Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, I have researched it throughout. Huge sums of money. At one time, put it in the international figures, $10 billion used to be the budget of Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan here. Now we are saying that it's like a bucket, I'm putting water in it. But there are too many holes in this. Should I ask somebody to close these holes? Or should I ask somebody to put more water in it? So that the level remains
the
same what we require. What we do in India is we ask somebody to put, we have asked corporates, CSR,
2%,
put more water in this bucket. But the holes, we have never allowed them to come. And can you please weld these holes? They are capable of welding these holes. Very well capable. Every corporate CSR who contributes 2% is very, very able to weld these holes. So if they spend even small amount of money to weld these holes, the bucket will not lose water. But what we do is that we say, let these holes remain. You please bring in more and more water on the top. And we are trying to keep the level float. So technology, for instance, management and technology and monitoring, we do not allow. We are asking big companies to do contribution. But what are these experts? They're not rich as Government of India. No company in India is as rich as Government of India. But their expertise is technology. Their expertise is management. Their expertise is so many things. But we're not asking them to give us what they know best.
We're just asking for the money.
We're asking them to give us money, which they don't have. I'm not saying they're poor like me, but still, compared to Government of India, they're nothing. So we're asking them to give little money to keep our bucket, but we're not asking them what they know best.
For their capability,
what
for technology,
their capability
project
is.
Management.
Everything. I said, I made it one day a paper, I said, Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, $10 billion, or 40, at one time 60,000 crores. I said, if you get some guy, Tata's, Birla's, whatever, these HCL and Premji's and all these, or any of the even smaller ones, ask them, can you help us manage this 10,000 crore budget with modern technology, modern management systems? And if you save only 2%.
You're saying 2% of 60,000 crores.
Crores.
Which will be far more than what they can donate with their
what
2%.
they can donate to you. And what will be the impact? But this kind of concept has not entered in our system yet. We call it a social value investment theory. It's a private partnership. But in this one, the private partner does not contributes money, but not to get returns in terms of money, but to get returns in terms of social value.
Social value.
So we're calling it social value investment. CSR is one thing. CSR has been changed. But what we need to develop in India is social value investment. We did this with the women's program. We entered into partnership with the Government of India in 2013 and in the framework of social value investment. We said we want to create, we will help you to develop technology. We will help you to develop technology for women's access to justice. It's a universal access system. We're saying any woman in the remotest of the remote area of India has telephone now. Once she faces violence, she can call any helpline. Or if she doesn't even go to the helpline and she doesn't call.
What's the helpline, sir, for this?
181.
181.
Yeah.
Okay.
But she can also call 112, which is an emergency response system. She can call 15100, which is a NALSA legal aid system. She can call 1098, which is a child line. Or she can go to the police station if they don't trust these helplines, because most people do not trust these helplines. And she can go to any police station, or she can go to any hospital, or even tell an Anganwadi worker in the village, I have this problem. The system will get to know about it within minutes, 5 minutes, less than that. And they call back and tell her that we will help you out through the entire process. We'll arrange your shelter, we'll arrange your legal services. If you have faced violence, we'll arrange your FIR, we'll get your forensic medical examination, 164 statement, trial, everything. So that she doesn't have to go anywhere. We said that this is not, the deficiency is not in the law. Because if you're rich or an influential rich family or a middle,
if you have resources,
you can get it.
You will get the same law.
Same. Law is same.
Law is the same,
And it works.
The access to the law.
Access to the law. Access to justice is important. Domestic violence is very important. Sexual violence is very important. If the system was working in Hathras, for instance, when this girl, she was picked by ambulance, the 181 in UP should have known about it because she was picked by an ambulance and police. They should have known about it. They could have told this girl's family that we are going to make sure that she gets medical treatment, forensic, everything will be done. But this kind of a system was developed by us, my trust, family trust, in 2013 in the social value investment framework. We're not getting into the details of what happened to this, but the social value investment framework, we said we will develop the technology which government systems will not be able to develop. I'm not saying that they are better technologists. I'm a better expert in technology than a NIC or CDAC or
anyone of this. Yeah.
I'm not saying that. But I'm saying I am
more focused maybe on that one particular problem.
I know I am learning. I spend time in domain research. It took me 4 years to know the law. It took me 4 years to know all the schemes, how they work, what is their organization structure, who is working where. So unless you have a research done on domain research, on this whole domain, what's the relationship between POCSO and One-Stop Center? What's the relationship between Juvenile Justice Act and PWDV? And you have to learn the processes, the procedures and so on. Then only you can develop technology for it. But government does not understand this. They say they will get an NIC person and say, make it. But the poor guy makes it. He makes it to the best of his ability. But he doesn't. He's not an expert.
In the domain.
In the domain.
Yeah.
And unless you have, and if you say, he takes instructions from a joint secretary or a director, but he's no expert in programming. He doesn't understand how computer systems work. So yeah, we have two people talking cross purposes and produce a system which doesn't work. So we said we will develop this technology at crores of rupees of private trust funds. And it is being developed. It is being put in place in pockets in Himachal, not in Himachal, in Kashmir, Chhattisgarh, Assam, even in Jammu today. You can call 181 and within a week, a woman of domestic violence will get a residence order, protection order, custody of child and interim maintenance back at home. It works today.
So what I'm hearing are the commonalities between what you developed in the anti-ragging. And of course, I mean, it's a revelation. I always considered ragging to be an unpleasant thing that should be taken away. But the implication that it has on future generations in terms of their EQ, in terms of just their confidence and their character, it's actually staggering what is happening year after year after year. And I'm so glad to hear that from 40%, which used to be the sort of benchmark when you began your initiative, it's now come down to 4% is what I hear, which is like 1/10. And
1/10.
God willing, it'll be completely or minimized to absolutely negligible element. And you also mentioned the fact that these same pillars which are used to solve the ragging problem can be used to solve, as in this case, you said, the women's access to justice.
The three pillars are partnership with government, independent monitoring, and technology. And these three things will resolve all problems.
So before we end, once again, I would like you to give out that number, which is the anti-ragging number, so that all those kids out there who are apprehensive, who are probably being victimized even now as we speak, they know that number. Also, more importantly, the kids who are thinking of doing the ragging, they know that there is a number out there. But most importantly, as you pointed out, the fence sitters who are sitting on the fence and watching but not doing anything know that there is a number to call. So can you just give out that number once again, sir?
And their parents should also remember this.
Yes.
1-800-180-5522.
1-800
180
180
5522.
5522. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.